Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of MindSpeaks webinar series. The focus of today's webinar is on empowering RPA programs through smart document capture. My name is Sukalp Sharma, and I'm the CEO of Mindfields, Australia, New Zealand, and I'll be your host today. And I'm very happy to be joined by Shaun Doherty, who is the Channels and Alliances Manager, Australia and New Zealand for Ephesoft. Welcome, Shaun. Ephesoft are one of Mindfield's strategic partners. Their smart capture solutions complement our intelligent automation practice. And I also want to introduce Jackie, who will be navigating the slides for us and also rolling out poll questions intermittently. So welcome, Jackie, as well. Shaun, very happy for you to be here with us.
Thank you, Sukalp, and hello to the audience. It's an exciting webinar that we get to focus on today. Ephesoft's role, especially in the RPA market, is very much about enhancing their deployments, and really that comes down to handling unstructured data, and that comes down to then capturing it all in a smart and strategic way. So looking forward to having this educational piece with you guys, and I appreciate you offering us the opportunity. Thanks, Sukalp.
Thank you, Shaun. Let's get going with this then. Jackie, could you move us to the next slide, please? Well, briefly, I don't think we need to reintroduce Mindfields. We've been doing RPA and intelligent automation for quite some time. And Shaun, a line or two about Ephesoft.
Yeah, so Ephesoft, we've been around in the smart data capture arena since around 2009, 2010. We've got about 1,000 enterprise deployments and projects across the world in about 53 different countries. We've worked on a number of different projects and a number of different processes. So our capabilities are understanding unstructured data and then transforming that into a structured way that gives insight to businesses is our lifeblood. So whether we're looking at invoice processing, CapEx, HR onboarding, customer onboarding, the variety of different areas that we work in is quite extraordinary. So looking forward to expressing a little bit more deeply about that through this webinar.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Shaun. Jackie, before we get this going, could you please walk us through some housekeeping rules?
Thanks, Sukalp. So all attendees participating in this session with us today will be in listen-only mode, so we can avoid any background noise. And if you'd like to reach out to Sukalp or Shaun at any point during this webinar with your questions, please feel free to type into the chat message, and they'll be able to see that and address those questions later when we have the Q&A session. Also, we'll share with you the slides and the recording for this webinar after the session is done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Could you get us to the next slide, please? All right. So here's what the agenda looks like. So essentially, we will be going through 4 sessions in this webinar, which will be then followed by Q&A. Session 1, we will focus on what is smart document capture and its importance. Then we'll talk about enhanced machine learning and why is it relevant and important for scalability. Session 3 will focus on the synergies between RPA and smart document capture technology and how they are mutually beneficial. And session 4, Shaun's going to take us through a use case or case study with some examples, and we can have a discussion on that after that. Of course, there's going to be polls during the webinar, and the results of the polls will be displayed right after the polls. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next 55 minutes or so. So Jackie, could you then take us to the first poll question? So poll question 1 for you before we get started with the first session. How are you looking to solve the increase of data coming into your organization? A, add headcount. B, look to solve with technology, offshore processes, or don't know yet? All right. What do you have to say about that, Shaun?
Oh, look, I think that's a pretty definitive answer to how organisations are going to solve the issue today and into the future as well. We looked at numerous years ago when I first started in automation. It used to be add headcount or lift in a shift and put it offshore. These days people and organisations are a lot more savvy and they start to look at what are going to be scalable solutions and answers to their problems. So, not surprised by that. Thanks, Sukalp.
Yeah, you said it. You said it. So it's a sign of where things are headed, and that's a nice segue into our first session as well. So let's see how we can solve it with technology. Jackie, could you please move us to the next slide? All right. So this brings us to session one. Shaun, would be great if you could unravel for us. So what is smart document capture? Now, OCR has been around for ages. So how is it different from that, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, look, and thank you, Sukalp. This is a question that we often get asked. Isn't it just OCR, or isn't it just scanning? Whether you use that terminology or not, there's a massive difference to what smart document capture is in OCR. As I'll showcase a little bit later, OCR becomes just one very tiny slither of our whole smart document capture makeup. When we look at these kind of 5 processes here, we're looking at capture, classify, extract, validate, and deliver. All of these have to intelligently add to the process before information goes into a line of business systems. So whether we're capturing it via email, whether we're polling and into, a network folder, whether we're looking at invoice or we're looking at documents coming from a scanning solution, it doesn't matter what format that information is coming in. We've got to be able to intelligently capture it. Now, the classification, that's real key, and I might keep coming back to this throughout the webinar, but classification of documents is the massive, need within an organization if you want to talk about scalability. So classification isn't so much just to identify an invoice, but identify whether it has a PO or a non-PO, whether it's a credit note, or if we're looking at different, credit notes, or if we're looking at different contracts within organizations or executive general meetings, or annual general meetings, we've got to be able to actually identify that quicker than any other organization. Then we've got to look at, once we've identified, we've got to extract the relevant data. We've got to actually understand what we need to lift off, analyze, and understand from that particular document. And then we've got to validate it. And I don't mean that we have to have someone looking at it. We've actually got to validate that against other databases. So whether we're looking at, say, if you're here in Australia, we can look up into the ASIC's website to verify company information. We might do a database lookup to your ERP system to validate bank account details or supplier details. And all of that has to be then transformed into a deliverable outlet. So that's smart document capture. There's a lot more to it than OCR. And next slide, Jackie, thank you. And so the question then kind of goes, well, why is that important? Why can't I just simply use, an OCR tool that's been around since the 1980s, 1990s? You've got to look then at what the future is actually going to hold. And as IDC has represented, 80–90% of data coming into an organization is unstructured. So again, another question that kind of follows that is, what is unstructured data? Unstructured data is information that comes in a semi-structured format that we know there's information on it. So let's look at an invoice. An invoice has an invoice date, a number, a total amount. It might have a purchase order on it. It has key information that we know exists on that document. What we don't know, and this is where the unstructured element comes in, is whereabouts that information sits on that document. So what we've got to be able to do, and we've got to move away from this template attitude, is really actually be able to zonally or use key value extraction elements to understand where that information is, grab it, extract it, and validate it, and make sure it's correct. So this is going beyond the traditional OCR, where back in the day people would have just filed in a document, we would have transformed it into machine text, and that would have been it. Because the output these days needs to include metadata. So if you're utilizing SharePoint, you've got to be able to find that information quicker than anything else. And the other kind of key component within this, and this is going back to the classification point that I raised in the last slide, is that you need a capture solution that doesn't just solve one process. You've got to look at having a capture solution that solves multiple processes, whether it's HR onboarding, whether it's invoices, CapEx, it doesn't matter. That smart data capture solution has to be nimble, because otherwise you're going to be stuck in an area that's not going to be stuck in processes with too many disparate solutions on your books. And finally, it's got to be able to integrate. It's got to play friendly. These days, organization solution software that's closed off to third parties, you start to see the roadblocks to scalability for yourselves as an organization. And that's why playing friendly with others in the back end really becomes key and important. Next slide, Jackie, thank you. So again, I'm going back even further here, and let's look at, why organizations struggle. Why do they struggle with documentations? Why do they struggle with, transforming their processes? Why do they struggle about actually identifying processes that need change? Far too often I talk with organizations who've been around for 30 years, and the first thing that kind of comes out of their mouths is, oh, well, we've always done it like that. That doesn't lead to innovation. That doesn't lead to scalability. Beyond that, if you've got knowledge workers who've been involved with the organization for a number of years, if they leave, if they go to a different organization, they take all of that information with them. So without a smart data capture solution that's kind of capturing all these first mile of information within the company, you're having these people with years of experience in their minds getting up and leaving. So all of these issues start to really cascade into, a real bottleneck for organizations. So albeit we've been talking about going paperless since the 1980s, and look, there's going to be a pipe dream, because there's always going to be, paperwork or documents that float through an organization. It's the important ones, the ones that are going to keep you within compliance with regulators. It's going to protect you from fraud. It's going to improve your customer support. It's going to improve your customers' engagement, your supplier engagement. It's going to keep you guys streamlined. All of that comes down to the first, smart document capture. So smart document capture isn't just OCR, it goes far beyond that. And next slide, Jackie. And so, like I said, the first capture piece that we have is whether it's coming from an MFP or a fax machine, green screen, mobile, it doesn't matter. We want to be able to capture that component. And like I was saying, OCR is just one very small sliver. If you look at that image processing step there, you see along there it says OCR, ICR, OMR, and PDF. I mean, that's one tiny little step in this whole process. So when people talk about OCR, or we've got OCR, well, what they're actually leaving out is a whole lot of information that can actually be validated, classified, and really enhance, the business processes within the organization. So there's a lot of steps that go into a smart document capture. There's a lot of things that go in there, whether it's enhanced machine learning, whether it's AI. There's components within it that improve the visibility or the information going into an organization. And those are one of the biggest factors and differentiators about smart data capture, document capture, if you will, against just the traditional OCR players in there. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Shaun. Well, that makes sense, right? So essentially, if we were to boil it down, the theme that's emerging is much more than just OCR. Helps organizations, in addition to capturing, classifying, extracting, validating, and delivering complex unstructured data as well, and its ability to convert that, take the key variables out in a structured format lends it very useful for the RPA processes and RPA tools downstream, which we're going to focus on in session 3. And then essentially, if we were to look at it from a higher perspective, it is the access to this accurate and timely structured data that underpins the digital transformation journeys of most organizations. If you don't have confidence in the accuracy of the data that you're receiving, then that's a big bottleneck. And then the timely availability and the structured availability of that data is a key driver as well. So thanks, Shaun, for that. We'll obviously, of course, take questions towards the end of this. So Jackie, could you move us to next slide, please? That takes us to session 2. Now, Shaun, you referred to machine learning. So what is this enhanced machine learning and why is it relevant for scalability? And how does your tool use it?
Yeah, thank you, Sukalp. Look, there's a lot of misinformation, actually, let me take that back. Misinformation is probably the wrong word. There's a lot of hyperbole around what machine learning is, or what AI, its involvement in automation is. We've got to be very practical around this and or pragmatic, if you will, around this, and understand that we, in a lot of senses, we're very much still at the infancy stage of machine learning, AI, and really kind of going into that next realm of the fourth industrial revolution. Where Ephesoft, or where we utilize our smart document capture component or solution and with enhanced machine learning, is really to actually identify and transform, or transform document information in real time as information comes into the organization. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, that we have a new supplier who sends through an invoice into our organization. Now, that supplier might exist in our ERP system, but our solution hasn't actually ever seen this supplier before. So this goes back to the unstructured data element we covered off in that first session. So when that information comes in, now we might be able to identify this as an invoice. What we also might be able to identify is number of key elements, or extract the number of key elements off that invoice. So we might be able to get the invoice date, we might be able to get the total, the subtotal, the GST. What we might not be able to get, though, is the BSB and the account number. And we might need to be able to extract those. So with enhanced machine learning, what the operators can actually do is click on that information, validate it, and that information then increases the knowledge and the capacity of the solution. So when that supply comes back in, and again, the information might be a little bit different. We might be going across 3 or 4 or 5 different pages this time because it was a big order. But still, we're still able to find that BSB and account number because we've identified to the solution that we want you to learn this information, and we want you to be able to actually utilize it for the next time it comes in. Next slide, please, Jackie. So what does enhanced machine learning do? Why is it important, and how does it drive scalability and value to an organization? I've been working within, the automation OCR capture space for nearly 8 years. When we first started, a lot of what we were doing, especially with pretty structured documents, was utilizing a lot of templates. So if you're an organization that has, say, 3, 4, 5,000 suppliers on their books, imagine the amount of work that it goes into building out those templates. Imagine the time, the man hours, the issues that would arise, and just not even that, then you have to go through the UAT. You have to go through all the testing to make sure that the information is being extracted correctly. And it goes in a little bit deeper and beyond that. So then you start to look at, okay, how many document types of that supplier do I need to be able to satisfy the OCR engine to be able to capture all this information and make sure that everything's going to run smoothly? And then we've got to think about, okay, what happens when a new supplier comes on board? Do I have the capability to train up other users, end users, IT managers, process improvement, and teach them how to actually zonally inquire on these documents where that information is? How much PS work's going to go into it? So you start to see, okay, well, wait up. All of this doesn't actually lend itself to a very scalable process or a very scalable solution. So this is what happens with enhanced machine learning, is that we put the onus or the information back on the end users, that we give a baseline for all that information, all those invoices, and albeit that I use invoices as an example throughout this webinar, the vast majority of a lot of processes that we see these days go beyond invoices. But even so, the end user who utilizes a smart document capture solution is able to teach that on the fly, that solution as they go through. So what we start to see is a really quick, faster deployment of solutions that complement RPA practices and programs or other line of business systems. So what we actually start to see is a lot quicker ROI. We start to see a lot more of a positive business impact within it. We start to see the prospect of scalability. You know, a lot of organizations in the past were bogged down with, you know, very much rigid documents that were coming into an organization. And the other exciting thing for us is that we're actually able to go through that land and expand process or land and expand thing. For a lot of my career and a lot of what I focused on, you know, my dream was to be able to enable organizations to start with one process, to really see that value and then start to take that model and branch it off into other processes within the organization. But what we found was re-engineering those processes that we started with, say, invoices, or it might have been HR, became so problematic that no one actually wanted to go down and start to look at another process to automate. So everyone was left with these silo applications of like, all right, we've done invoices, let's go find a different automated solution that we can find for HR or for, you know, fleet management or asset management, whatever it might be. You know, you really start to lose the value of scalability and the ROI that was projected within it. Now, to kind of get to that, to multiple processes, to kind of achieve that kind of value, to really kind of make sure that you guys are getting value for money within a smart document capture landscape when you're fitting into your RPA program, is that you've got to have a limitless box to be able to play in, if you will. You know, you've got to be able to have the capabilities to be in the cloud or have a hybrid of on-premise in the cloud. You've got to be able to integrate with a number of multiple line of business systems. You can't limit yourself to users and page count either. You know, if we're talking 5,000 suppliers, like I used that example earlier, and we're talking about, you know, beyond that, about 150, 200,000 invoices or documents coming into an organization, and there's 2 pages per document per invoice, so we're talking about 400,000 documents or pages coming into an organization, and then we've got 1,000 staff. We're, you know, onboarding them, or we're onboarding new customers and you know, new suppliers. All of these different documents coming in, and we've got to worry about page count. That's not scalability in my mind. That's not value in my mind. You know, and what we're really looking at here is making sure that we have the baseline of understanding with enhanced machine learning, where we can achieve value really quickly. And then we have to have the features of that smart document capture enhance or complement the capabilities to scale and be quite dynamic. Next slide, please, Jackie. And so let's go down to drill down to results. Everyone kind of talks around, well, how accurate is it? Or what's the results when we look at this process? Or what do we get from if we're looking at, say, HR? You know, it's like answering how long is a piece of string, because every organization's different. You know, everyone is never going to have the same results. If I ran a 100-meter flat race against Sukalp, we're going to have different results because we have different processes, different ways we're actually doing things with that. So you can't compare yourself from one organization to another. But what we can do is give a pretty general idea after 10 years of being involved in the smart data capture arena, give you guys a pretty good grasp of what some of the results can be. So whether it's, you know, throughput accuracy rate of up to 96% across industries, whether we're reducing mortgage processing, closing docs down to, you know, 5 minutes from 15, whether we're increasing, you know, or decreasing labor savings, whether we're actually able to, you know, really finite the indexing capabilities of documents coming in. Because this goes back to another point that I made a little bit earlier around metadata as well. You know, grabbing information, transforming and feeding it into one application is great, but you got to make sure that's always searchable. especially for those in the audience listening who come from a government background. You wouldn't understand how difficult and how hard it is to find all the information that you want, just because there's so much legacy systems, so much legacy information just sitting there. With smart document capture, you can transform all of that. Once you've transformed all that information, fed it through that document capture, an RPA tool picks it up and can push it out and refine the journey that it has on. It can deal with the exceptions. It can answer questions. It can feed into the AI component that you guys are having, the chatbots, whatever it might be. These all start to become complementary. So that's what a smart document capture is. It increases, it decreases those really vital components of a business. It also plays well with other line of business systems like your RPA to really enhance and give value back to the organization. So thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Shaun. That was very well summed up. The capabilities to promote accuracy or increase the trust in the solution. This is able to promote better metrics in the organization, amongst the heap of other benefits as well. You talked about supplier invoicing. That's certainly one of the use cases we have automated as well. And we can see the benefits of machine learning, the ability to read the header information fast and quickly and serve it to the bots so that they can then go in and process the invoices is really, really valuable. So thank you for walking us through that. Promoting accuracy with relatively less human activity is a key outcome which the bot and the smart data capture solution combination is able to promote. So thanks again for taking us through that, Shaun. Jackie, next slide, please. All right, that brings us to our next question, poll question. What would be the best result for your organization from adding smart data capture? Are you looking at return on investment, reducing manual labor and mundane tasks performed by the staff, the reallocation of staff, more visibility of processes, and more accurate data? So there can be multiple answers as well. Please pick the one that most relates to you. That's a fairly even split, Shaun. Your views?
Yeah, that is. More accurate data. Look, I don't think anyone and the audience listening can undervalue that component there as well. As we move into this fourth industrial revolution, or the next stage in business processes and the business activities, data is going to be essential. Data on your customers, data on your staff, data on the way things are being done, data on your numbers. It's just going to be immense. So, but yeah, like you said, Sukalp, I mean, it is a pretty even split across those. So, interesting result.
Yeah, all relevant factors, but accuracy is paramount, and obviously return on investment is important as well. In line with the theme these days, we have to move human labor away from, or human resources away from mundane tasks, because guess what? That's what the machines are going to be doing. And that comes with created capacity, or that's really the theme of most RPA programs that we are leading across Australia. The organizations want to free up capacity or create capacity so that they can take on additional volumes, or they can take on higher value add activities. So that goes hand in hand with some of the other points here, and better understanding and visibility of processes is key as well. So yeah, good results. Jackie, yes, please. You move us to session 3 now. All right, so this one focuses on the mutual beneficial association of RPA and smart document capture, how one feeds the other. So Shaun, can you please take us through this and share your views on this with us?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Sukalp. Next slide, Jackie. Thank you. So let's look at the growing, I guess, trend around RPA and its involvement in business processes. For a lot of organisations I work with, a lot of them are involved with the RPA space. The capability of having a bot do repetitive tasks that alleviate staff so they can focus on more value-add processes or more value-add activities is immense. And we should never not look at, I guess, enhancing those processes. Where a lot of organisations start to balk, though, is where they try to find that end-to-end solution. A lot of internal processes within organisations that are moving data from one, I guess, source to another. That's great for a bot. When we start looking at, say, onboarding a new staff member, and where we grab all that information, and then we have to feed that to a bot in a structured format, the old OCR components out there, the old OCR users, those bottlenecks within that program, within that project, really started eating the ROI. The project blowout was immense. So this is why smart document capture becomes so important to an RPA program, because we want to alleviate those bottleneck situations within an organization. I know on a project that we worked on where the previous organization, or the previous idea was to use OCR. It added 6 months to the project timeline, half a year. It's an immense amount of devalue to that project. We came back a little bit later with our offering of our smart document capture against this competitor that had 6 months. We were able to deliver that in 6 weeks. So we're able to actually, I guess, be consistent with the timelines around RPA programs. And that's huge because everyone's moving at such a breakneck pace that we need to be able to utilize really smart document capture components to actually be able to make sure everyone can keep up with that pace. And then we look at that kind of second point there as well. The top 2 drivers for implementing RPA are process efficiency and better accuracy. When we look at the process efficiency, and I'm going to be quite blunt here, you feed bad data into a system, you can get bad data out. So if your processes don't have a really solid foundation in the first place, you're not going to get that efficiency that you're looking for. So where we start to kind of come in, and what we do when we analyze our component to be involved with an RPA program, was we look at the information coming in and we go, right, how is that information coming in? Again, I might adhere to this old chestnut, the invoice process. We might have, say, Betsy, who's been doing this for 30 years, who prints every invoice, looks at all the line items, makes notations, sends it off to her director for signing before she rescans it, puts it back into the organization. Now, is that an efficient way of processing an invoice? No. Is it the way she's been doing it for 30 years? Yes. So how do we actually adhere to that driver of process efficiency? Well, we start to actually utilize smart document capture when we actually get involved, we get Betsy involved with that process as well. Because the process efficiency that we want to gain of 94%, we're taking away 94% of that activity that's mundane on Betsy's shoulders, taking that away, all that boring work, if you will, and giving her the capabilities to really engage with customers, to be smart and to be articulate with how they can improve their supplier relations. And then with that better accuracy as well, that 85% of people looking for better accuracy. Again, the RPA program is not going to be able to provide accuracy unless it has accurate data. It's not going to be able to give you the right information unless it has the right data to feed off in the first place. So what we're really got to be doing is making sure that that first step in any process where RPA is going to be involved really has a strong foundation to have smart document capture being involved with it. And when I mean smart foundation, we actually understand the processes in and out. So the question there is, how do you solve the efficiency gains and accuracy problem with the data in the RPA program is wrong? Next slide, Jackie, please. Like I've probably been saying, both bluntly and probably some subliminally, invest in a smart data capture tool, not just OCR. OCR is not going to be able to give you, it might, look, I'll take that back. It might solve today's problems. It might even solve tomorrow's problems. But what about 2020s or 2025 or 2030? You know, what happens when we start getting to a point where you need to have something that's growing, that has innovation being put into it, that actually has some smarts and R&D into it? Because that's what a smart document capture tool is. It doesn't just stop by being an OCR engine. It adds functionality, features, capabilities, and the innovation to it. Because that document on ramping, you know, we go back to that validation point that I was raising a little bit earlier. You know, we can go to web services and look up, use fuzzy database lookups to validate information coming in. We can raise exceptions and deal with information before it actually hits the business, so that anything that goes beyond the OCR or beyond the smart data capture solution is accurate. And that's immensely powerful. If you have better information coming into an organization that's being better utilized than anything else, then that's just immensely powerful for better business decisions. And that contextualizes your data. And so what I mean by contextualize your data, information isn't just looked at in isolation. So we're not just looking at, say, a supplier number or a PO number. We're looking at, okay, what that PO number is from, you know, what supplier. We might be looking at, say, with an HR onboarding, we might be looking at a social media score as organizations introduce that. But we contextualize that against, you know, previous information about that age group, that kind of gender, whatever it might be, to actually really give some sound information within the data landscape. And again, this becomes where we need to start to move towards that. You know, we're not just looking at OCR, we're not just looking at converting data into machine text, we're looking at contextualizing information so we can make better decisions for the business. And those better decisions go into those RPA programs to really give sound, innovative ideas to the business to grow and be quite nimble and streamlined. Next slide, please, Jackie. Thanks, Sukalp. May have just lost Sukalp there.
Sorry, Shaun, I was on mute. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah. So thank you. Look, very aptly put there. Data is the new fuel for the fourth industrial revolution. Everything around us is producing data through Internet of Things. So there's a lot of unstructured data around us, and the ability, what makes smart document or data capture really powerful is the fact that we are able to look at that vast amounts of data, you convert it into structured data and get meaningful results, combine it with bots /RPA, which is able to go through those large swathes of data to produce or to what I call, underpin the digital transformation journey for any organization. So this is a really, really powerful combination. We are very excited about it. And as I said towards the start of this presentation as well, that the combination of RPA or automation with smart document capture lays the foundation for successful digital transformations in organizations. And it's a very powerful combination. Thank you, Jackie. Can you please take us to the next poll question? Which department do you think would benefit most from smart data capture and RPA? Shaun, do you have a favorite there? While we are
Oh, look, traditionally finance is where people start. And look, there's no shame in, well, there's no shame, I guess, if you will, looking at finance and looking at the accounts payable process. You know, that really gives a lot of value. Now, doesn't undermine the, I guess, complexity around AP. There is a lot of complexity that goes into it, but there's a lot of value that comes from it. It's a proving ground.
Okay, looks like finance and ops are the joint leaders here. Well, I would expect some use cases in HR and IT as well. I can clearly see things in there, but thoughts on this, Shaun? And what do you think the not listed here from?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the not listed would have been, and maybe we'll find that out at some other point. But HR, that's starting to really kind of raise its head in a lot of organisations. I'm working with a particular company where they've got about 25 different documents they need to classify and validate for a particular, or before they can have a particular doctor get involved in a process. So, you know, there's a lot of heavy lifting in HR, and I'm surprised that no one clicked on that.
Yeah. No, there's certainly use cases. We've done some of these in HR as well. So I'm certainly aware of these use cases, and I can see potential for it to be applied there. Operations is, not an obvious one. So operations are varied depending on which industry the company comes from. And there are massive applications across the business units. All right, that's great. On expected lines, Jackie, could you please now take us to the case study session? So, Shaun, if you can walk us through an example and talk us through the challenges you faced and the key outcomes achieved in this real-life example.
Yes, certainly. So, some of you, all of you, maybe even just a couple of you might recognize DBS Bank. This is an organization that we work with at over in Singapore. And they were looking at, again, we're looking at this the financial aspect as well. They're looking at the trade finance and corporate loans. So what we're really looking at, and I guess the issue and the struggle that they were having initially kind of reverts back to what I was talking about with the classification process. Classification really is a key component of smart document capture. So what they were traditionally looking at were OCR templated approaches, but the amount of information coming in just wasn't being conducive to a scalable solution. You look at those results up there, the trade finance, POs, bills of lading, invoices are all captured. Now that's three different types of, I guess, information coming in. Now we might have, I guess, 5, 6, 7 different varieties of those POs, bills of lading, and invoices. So you start to see the scale of what we're trying to do if we don't have a smart document capture based on templates. So we go down to also the corporate loans as well. What we're actually able to do is capture that information and then feed that into the line of business systems. The key with that, though, was to really get more granular with the information they were capturing around those corporate loans. What were they going to be like, the number of, I guess, the large amount that they were loaning out, to who, how, what was the circumstances, is there any correlations? Are we looking at patterns? How do we actually start to get a handle on all this information that we're doing? It's like when you buy a car, all that information, kind of person who you are, where you come from, all that kind of vital information that paints a picture of you, all of that information is being left off through the corporate loans. So the challenges that we faced within here was just actually be able to identify what information was that we were actually trying to capture. And then the other challenge was to make sure that it was always going to be scalable for them. So again, we're looking at multiple processes here. We're looking at unstructured information, and we're looking at classifying all this different information before we actually feed it out into the RPA program that they actually had in this. So what we were actually doing, what we actually came about from a position of being agnostic in terms of the RPA backend, was looking at, all right, what information do we need to feed to it? So all of the information, and we take the corporate loans as well, all that information we're capturing, we didn't need to feed that all to the the digital workers, the bots, if you will. We actually needed to be able to, I guess, siphon that off into a multiple different line of business systems. So all of this traditionally required, I think it was 22 score FTE to be able to solve all of these issues. We were able to introduce a one capture solution feeding multiple bots and reduce that head count quite considerably. So all of that accuracy, that productivity, that efficiencies we were looking at were a massive result from it. So really, the biggest challenge that they had at the initial stages was how do they start? And we started with one process, one bit of information, and grew and scaled from there. So the challenges there really lie to identifying which one's going to be the most conducive to smart document capture and RPA, which one's going to bring the most value, and which one's going to be the most provable, I guess, baseline for us to be able to expand on those. And for the audience, those are the kind of three components that you should be looking at. What is the easy one to do first? What's the one that's going to prove value? And what's the one that's going to be able to, have scalability put behind it? If you get a process that has those three components around there, you'll probably have immense success to it. So with DBS, they've been a client of ours for a number of years now. The application has been one of the, more dynamic processes, solutions that they put in there. So we're very, very happy and very, very proud with the results that have actually come through from that. Thanks, Sukalp.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Shaun. Jackie, does that bring us to the Q&A? How are we doing for time, Jackie? So that's 10 minutes for Q&A?
Yes. We're good. Excellent. For time.
So one of the questions I get asked, Sukalp, if I might add something here, is how do you get buy-in from stakeholders to look at the project? That's been a difficult one. I don't know what your experience has been like with that, but I have my opinions on how to buy in from them.
Yeah, look, we follow our own process. So where there is potential to improve accuracy, to improve the metrics, which is normally in the form of reducing average handling time, improving accuracy, and creating capacity, which has a dollar impact as well. So that is a good enough reason for the stakeholders to consider. One of the key variables in this case is that you're combining your RPA bot with another solution. So sometimes it invariably involves a proof of concept. But once we clear that hurdle, and once we've seen and tested and validated the accuracy which comes out of that proof of concept, that is the trigger for the full-fledged implementation. What are your views?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, you've got to follow a process to prove value. A lot of, especially in the early days of the RPA, juggernaut as it is now, a lot of moonshot projects were produced. And what I mean by moonshot projects, we're talking, nearly $1 million plus invested in solving business problems. What we've seen, especially these days, is a lot of scale back solutions where let's prove value in a more controlled environment, where we can actually quantify results, and then we can actually see, okay, look, this worked on here. How do we scale that out? How do we introduce other technologies that are going to help with that scalability? There shouldn't be any kind of, fear about looking at the easy, low-hanging fruits in a process before you tackle some of the bigger ones. And that tends to find, when you look at a smaller project than a larger project, it's always immensely easier to kind of find some budget and funding and buy-in from the stakeholders with that. So we look at easy, low-hanging fruit, prove value, prove scalability, and go from there.
Right, that makes sense, Shaun. Look, I have another one for you, since we still have time. So we look at pricing models in the industry for document capture. So most of those are based on per pages and so on. I believe yours is different. Do you want to walk us through that, and as to the key principle and thinking around why that is different and what it is, without actually going into the specific pricing details, but the principle on which it's based on?
Yeah, sure. To give I guess a bit of an idea about the principle on what how we license and how we price our solution, really going to give you I guess a voice, the thinking behind my CEO Ike Kavis. Ike started this company with a specific need to be innovative with the technology. Once that innovation was in place, there had to be innovative thinking about the way we licensed it within it. How do we actually make a solution, a data capture solution that's smart and intelligent, scalable, functionally, and I guess innovative in terms of how it's going to be implemented into an organization. So traditionally, a lot of organizations look at, okay, how many documents are going through? All right, you've got X amount of documents, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. Now we justify that by saying, okay, it's going to cost I'm just putting this number out of the air, 10 cents per document to process, and this is the value that we bring. And that's how we write the business case. Organizations have moved away from that. They don't want to be, I guess, beholden to perpetual licenses. So we work off a subscription-based licensing model. It gives organizations the ability to have a solution in place quickly. That then also they have time to go, right, we're here for 2 years, we know how this solution is going to look, we know what the value we want to get from it, but we don't have to be here after this 2 years if we find the solution is not working. So the risk is gone from their decision about implementing a smart data capture solution. The business case helps, the scalability helps, and we don't worry about end users as well, because that becomes a key component about it being brought in, I guess, expanded across the business units. If you've got, isolated finance, isolated HR who don't talk to each other, but utilize the same solution, you can't limit the number of users on that. So we look off a subscription-based model, whether it's cloud, on-prem, or a hybrid of the two, with unlimited volume, with unlimited end users.
That's great. And that subscription is a function of the server capacity being utilized, right?
Yes, most certainly. So the subscription-based model, really comes down to, it's almost like you look at your own life. You've got Netflix, you've got your own subscriptions that you have and that you pay by, that you factor in for your monthly budget. It's like organizations these days utilize that in terms of their budgeting and control as well. So the value is, and the attitude is, to move towards those subscription-based models opposed to perpetual licenses.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks, Shaun. Jackie, do we have any questions from the participants?
Yes, so we have a question from John Haynes, and he's wanting to know if we can discuss any other use cases for ICR other than invoicing.
Yeah, sure. Does John have one that's specific in mind? So we are working on a particular project at the moment, which is really around, and it's really again coming down to, so let me paint the picture for you, John, here. Okay, so you go in to buy a car, and there's all this information that you need to fill out. So we need a driver's license. We need you to have a statement from your employee to say that you're employed. We need your payroll statement, so we can understand how we can finance you. So what we're doing is we're correlating all that information, capturing all of that. So we're talking about 5-6 different documents. We're then going off to the credit back-end solution to understand, once we've got all that information, how do we evaluate how much we're going to lend you? Because you want $70,000, But with all the data that we've actually correlated from about 5, 6 different documents, the information we've got in there is we're only allowed to, allowing to lend you $50,000. So what we're still doing is capturing a variety of different information. We're capturing a license to prove who the person is, and we're authenticating that. We're capturing, payrolls. We're capturing, information that we've actually the dealership has had to grab. Where you live, what you do you have a gym membership? All these different bits and pieces, and all that metadata as well. That enables that organisation to start painting a picture of its customers as well. Who's buying it where? Are the RAV4s that we're selling more popular in this suburb opposed to the Mazda 3s with the roof down that we're selling over across the other side of the bridge? So all this information and data starts to really paint a picture about their customers. So this is where this is the value that we have beyond just invoices. Any document coming into an organization, we capture, transform, and spit out really intelligent ideas behind it. Thanks, Sukalp.
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. Jackie, we have time for one more question.
No other questions from my end.
Okay, great. All right. So, on that note, I'd like to thank everyone who attended this webinar. So thank you for your participation. Thank you, Shaun, once again. I think that was very insightful. And thank you, Jackie, for navigating the slides through for us and keeping us on time. Thanks, everyone. The recordings of this webinar will be available on our website, and you can always get in touch with us for any other questions. Thanks, and have a good day.